And often one of the biggest problems is there just aren't enough good IT people to go around to keep the machines and hardware working. But more importantly, and usually most universities, certainly in North America, have pretty good ICT infrastructure now. But also in addition, you need people who can produce media, web designers and audiovisual producers. For instance, we're trying to create simulations at Southern Alberta Institute of Technology that will allow people to learn how to manipulate equipment in a virtual environment. And that requires very skilled web designers and web programmers to do the detailed diagrams, animations that will allow the students to calibrate the equipment in the same way as if they were working real equipment. And lastly, you need instructional designers to decide on what's the cost of doing this, whether it's worthwhile, what media to use in terms of video versus audio when you're creating web courses. And lastly, you need managers, project managers, or people, directors of learning technologies who understand the technology and can manage this and can work in a cost-effective manner. Also, you have to change the student support system. If it's mandatory for students to use technology for teaching, then the administrative services must become web-based too. A classic case of this is that students working online don't want to queue up to pay their fees. They say, if I can study online, why can't I pay online? And yet some institutions won't allow students to use credit cards, for instance. And yet what we found, they won't allow them to use credit cards because credit cards take 2% of the tuition fee. However, we found we cut back 80% of our administrative staff when the students were doing the online administration. So it's a short-term view. You can actually get long-term gains. In fact, you're not going to get much in the way of cost savings on the teaching side, but you can get substantial savings on the administrative side when you move towards e-learning. So that means the administrative managers must be involved as well. You can't just go charging off as a department without informing the registrar about what you're doing here, because it has consequences for the registrar's office. This means then developing not just an e-learning strategy, but an institutional e-strategy that covers all the aspects of operation. Guess what? UBC has a budget, something like $1 billion a year. It's a lot of money. Its purchasing budget alone is about 20 million. So there was a lot of sense in moving e-commerce into the university as well as e-learning and e-administration. And of course, you can't just do e-commerce unless they can link to the other parts of the university as well. So it's not just an e-learning strategy that's required. What's required is what's called a seamless web, the ability to move everything across the web. So instructors can get class lists, can post grades, and can get email addresses automatically by going online through the web. No instructor wants to type in 120 email addresses, believe me. That is the most time-consuming and frustrating job. What you want to be able to do is when you get your class list, you've got all the email addresses in the form of an email distribution list. So you can automatically just click on your class name and all the messages will go to all the students in that class. Student portals, where students can get in and get the information they need. What are their grades? What are the courses they need to take? And so on. And you can push information out to the students so they only get the information they need for the courses that they're taking. And you get more student self-management then. And through portals, students can create e-portfolios, not just their grades. They can not just go to employers with their grades, they can show the employers the work they've done because it's all on the web. And the employers can go and see what kind of work they've done at university. Student administration, then you can use the web for recruitment, marketing, fundraising, and keeping contact with your alumni. Remember, if we're talking about lifelong learning, you have to have a way of letting your graduates know about the new courses you're offering so the old graduates can enroll in the new courses. Admission, registration, book sales and online fee payments can all be done online. And student records, class lists and grades can all be kept online. that means an integrated e-strategy. And if you want to see an example of that, go and look at www.estrategy.ubc.ca. So what are the implications then of the knowledge-based economy and e-learning for universities? First of all, what's happening with the knowledge-based economy, we've opened up a major new target group that's not been very well dealt with by universities. Many universities have had continuing education departments, but this is more than continuing education. Lifelong learners are somewhat different. They are alumni and already graduated. They've often got degrees. We ran a program fully online, a master's program aimed at people in the workforce, and we found that 20% of them of the enrollments had PhDs, 40% had masters, so they were taking their second masters. 60% already had postgraduate qualifications for this program. They need to continue learning. They're working with families, and as I said, it's different from continuing education, which is more, the lifelong learners are more driven by the workplace and the work and their market, but they want qualifications. They don't want just to take a course for interest. They want to be able to go to an employer and say, this is part of the mobility of the knowledge-based worker. They're often self-employed, but they may eventually be contracted to work for another employer, or they may have clients and they want to show that they're qualified in whatever area they're working. Now, we did an estimate of the size of the lifelong learning market in Canada. If everybody in the knowledge-based industry went back for 3 months training over a period of 5 years, which many employers would say is not enough, then we would have to double the university and college system, because there's that many. There's as many people in the lifelong learning market as there are people coming out of university. Now, most of those won't go to universities. A lot of this training is done within corporations, or it's done by the private sector. But if we think that the role of a university is to create new knowledge, that new knowledge needs to get out, not just not learning just through corporate training, but getting the research out into the workforce. And so there's a very important role for universities here. Lifelong learners have different needs to undergraduates. They want delivery to work or home. They want it just in time. They don't want big courses. They want small chunks. They want to be able to accumulate what they've learned over a period of time. So they want small chunks but leading to credentials. And they want the latest knowledge but adapted to their own learning context. And of course they make great students because you put them in a group online and they share experience. And often collectively they have more knowledge than the individual instructor does, although the individual instructor may know more individually than any of the individual students. And the problem for universities is that they're already overwhelmed by this mass higher education, by the high school entrance increasing each year. The last thing a university professor wants is more students. So you say to them, well, you've got all this market of lifelong learners out there. They say, go away, I've got enough students already. I don't want to know. So we need new funding models that actually serve lifelong learners. And in fact, they're an interesting group. They've already been through the post-secondary system. They've already been subsidized by government. In fact, and this is one of the interesting things, despite complaints about increasing fees in North America, most university students come from middle-class families, and they're the most highly subsidized of all students, more subsidized than primary school students in North America. So why would the state pay for them to come back for lifelong learning? They can afford to pay full costs for this, and will pay full costs because it's in their commercial interest. That means you can run courses that are fully cost recoverable and hire new research professors to meet that market. And that's so you can have self-financed programs hiring new research professors. And we did that at UBC. In fact, a very interesting model. What we did, we said, we know there's a market out there. We know they'll pay full price. We know the existing professors won't take on the work